say black things and stuff like that over there. Nobody knows. I figured, hey, that's what he's supposed to be here, you know? Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. You want to start? Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Schenectady City Council Committee meeting for Tuesday, September the 7th, 2021 to order. And I just would like to apologize for the delay due to technical issues, but we're now back online. This evening, we're fortunate to have the Schenectady School District Superintendent, Annabelle Stoller Jr. with us and his cabinet, as we call them. We are fortunate to have him do a presentation to talk about the school district and the services that is being conducted at the school district. So I'd like to invite him to conduct the presentation.
Thank you for having me. You want to sit, stand? Okay. Testing. Well, it's only for the people watching on TV. Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I did have my mask, so if any students or families watching, I was prepared. But here the rules are a little different, so since I'm vaccinated, I'm going to be optional. So I first want to thank the City Council for allowing me to come and speak. I'll try to be brief, but I learned early in my career that two people you don't give a microphone to, and that's a pastor and a superintendent. So I just want to warn you. No, but in all seriousness, grateful to be here, and hopefully this is the start of a very much a collaborative effort between the City School District and the City Council and the Mayor's Office and those individuals in the room. So I'm going to jump on. Next slide. So I always start out everything I do in the district with kind of our vision, our tagline, and our values. I think these things as an organization guide us, they should ground us. I'm just sharing them to you, I'm not going to read them to you here. But the three things that I think are the most important as an organization are our values, and that's focused on equity, collaboration, and learning. That's kind of our three major pillars, and that's you're going to see that evident in everything we do as an organization. Next slide. We have a strategic plan that was started prior to my arrival, but I'm of the belief that you don't necessarily throw everything out just because you have new leadership. There's a lot of work done here, a lot of stakeholder voice, a lot of community voice, a lot of staff members who are part of it. And our strategic plan is around 4 pillars. There's going to be some similarity to those values. So there's going to be one is on student and graduate success, another one is on passionate people, another one is on partnerships with families and community, and the last one is on efficient systems and equitable resources. And again, I'm not going to read to you, but all the stuff's on our website, and I can make a copy to you available. I did send it to City Council President. Next slide. This is my kind of entry plan into the community, into the district, into the work here in Schenectady. This is available online, but I just wanted to share it with City Council so you kind of have an idea of kind of my focus and my charge. I do want to point out this is week 8 of me in the district, so I'm still in phase 1 where I'm looking, I'm listening, I'm learning. But unfortunately, as a superintendent, you have to do kind of the other phases, even though you're looking and listening, because we're trying to open up schools come Thursday. So we're also making some decisions, making some changes, bringing freshman talent to the district, hiring new teachers to the community. But I want to focus on kind of 4 different areas there. There's district, community, staff, and students as my focus. And so as I look, listen, and learn, I'm engaging with each of those pieces of the circle. I have kind of like smaller subgroups listed around them. I have my goals listed there for you to see. So my first goal is to return to full in-person learning. I came into a district that had not brought students back since March 13th, 2020. In most cases, people had choice whether or not they had to come back last year. So what did that translate into? Less than 50% of your kids came back. And so to me, that was borderline criminal in my mind, because we had kids who haven't seen a caring adult in almost 2 years, and we were okay with it. And so one of the first things that I'm not okay with is continuing that practice. So we want to bring students back to be with amazing teachers, principals, school support staff, to full in-person learning. So we are doing that come Thursday. That's our opening day. So if anybody is watching, please make sure you help get your kids to school on time on Thursday. We'll be excited to see them back. Again, the only dress requirement we have is a mask, obviously, along with the regular school clothes. Also want to focus on graduation rates, college readiness, which is, that's our business, teaching and learning. We're about outcomes for kids, graduating within 4 years, getting them ready for college ready, so that they're ready for college and obviously they're ready for career. Increase in student attendance is another big one. Because of the pandemic, because of remote learning, we know kids didn't engage. We know screens didn't turn on for many of our kids. That's a conversation we gotta have. We gotta be okay with having it. Remote learning creates some additional barriers. One of them was student attendance, student engagement. Because we can't always ensure that there's a parent or an adult to make sure a kid logs in. Because maybe that parent or adult has to work. And we can't, fault our families for that. So again, that's why we gotta bring them in, so we can attack this chronic absenteeism that we have at most common in urban settings. And then the last one, and probably I think the most important one, is I have to guide a community that needs some healing. Obviously there was a departure from previous leadership, and I need to reunite the district and the community. This is the first time, from my understanding, that the superintendent has spoken to city council, which blew my mind when I asked city council president Mudamer to come speak. He was like, really? He was like thrilled. So, I have to rebuild confidence in our district, in the schools, in our staff, in our programs. And I think, again, if we're really all going in the same direction, we're doing great things. And the last thing is in 2025, the goal would be that we're a district in good standing. What that means is we don't have any schools on any naughty list, or none in receivership, none persistently dangerous, none low performing. So I have my charge, and that mirrors my contract. So the goal is by year 4, I should be in good standing. If not, I don't expect to be renewed. Next one. So I'm coming to you to share my 3 commitments that I've shared with administrators. I'll be sharing them with teachers tomorrow when we open up to our teachers and I get to address all of our staff. One is I'm going to commit to work hard every day for this community, for this district, always for the betterment of our district. Never about myself, but for the kids, for the opportunities for families, and for those who live in the city of Schenectady. I'm always going to commit to being transparent. That does come with some consequences. Sometimes you may not get the answer you were looking for. That goes for families, that goes for staff, that goes for my leadership team, and that goes for the community as a whole. But I will always try to tell you why, give you some background, give you an understanding. I'm going to commit to transparency. And my last one is I'm going to always work and lead from a support model, meaning that I know I cannot do this work alone or in isolation, so I'm always going to look to figure out how I support my principals. I'm of the belief that great principals give you great teachers, who give you great students, who give you great schools, right? So if I do my work at the district level and make sure our principals are supported, they'll make sure our teachers are supported, our teachers will make sure our kids are supported, and it'll go on, and at the end of the day, we'll have a great school district. Next one. So if you haven't subscribed, I encourage you to subscribe. I put out a weekly brief. Our Chief Communications Officer is here, Karen Corona, so if you need details or if you have an email address, she can sign you up. She is the mastermind behind this. I just help provide content. She works her magic, makes it look really pretty, and then gets it out. But I encourage you, because this is my effort to be transparent. It's my opportunity to let you know who I meet with, what am I doing, what my time, right? Everyone always says, what's the superintendent doing? We pay him this much money, what's he doing all the time? So this is my hope to show you where I'm at, who I'm meeting with, what's our focus as a district, what am I doing? And the latest coolest thing is people want to get in the brief, right? They're like, hey, you can't just meet with me. I need a picture with you so I can end up in your brief. So you may have seen our mayor in the brief recently, a couple weeks back when we met with him. I met with our police chief, Clifford. And so I keep doing that, not just to show off, but to really let the community know that we are having conversations, we are collaborating, we're trying to figure out different ways. And then, most importantly, we figure out cool ways to highlight our kids. And so you'll see in this one, we highlighted one of our own students who did an amazing mural at our elementary school. So if you get a chance to go to Page Elementary, check it out. Next. So I found this picture online, and when you're trying to talk about the work and change, I'm very symbolism. I'm really big into visuals. As a former art teacher, I always believe pictures sometimes tell the story better. So this picture really stuck with me. And what do you see here, right? You see a sun rising above the electric city, right? And next one. And so, in my infinite wisdom, I thought of this hashtag that we could use to kind of guide our work. So this has been our theme since I've been here for the 8 weeks. We're going to continue to use this for the year and hopefully beyond. And it's Schenectady Rising. So if you're on social media, all city council, I invite you to tweet us and join the movement. And it's our commitment to reopen, rebuild, reignite the district with a commitment again to excellence in teaching and learning, equity, engagement, and efficiency. Next one. And so, as a superintendent, you tend to think of things in larger systems. This is a systems thinking type of diagram. I feel, from my assessment and from the assessment of Capital Region BOCES and feedback from meeting with key people in the district, board members, that we're at the bottom of this pyramid. This compliance, repair, and upgrade. This is kind of how we've been operating, right? We'll just do the bare minimum, make sure we check off the boxes, and we'll just repair things when they get broken, and we'll upgrade them when they need to be upgraded. And if we're going to do this work well as an organization, my job would be to move our organization to the top of the pyramid where we're effective, we're efficient, we're sustainable. And so that's going to take some time. So again, you notice that 2025 timeline. Next one. One thing that I did coming in was I reset the organizational structure. And so I'm just showing you some of the boxes here. So you have an opportunity to see what we've done. It is a little bit different. So this is a district of almost 10,000 kids, but we didn't have an assistant superintendent or a deputy superintendent, which again, no judgment, but I just didn't understand the logic. And so we've changed that dynamic. I now have a deputy superintendent joining me, and I have assistant superintendents that are going to lead certain silos of the work. We have a chief information officer, chief technology officer, and we have some dynamic individuals joining us to lead the work of our elementary schools, and we're still recruiting for someone to do our secondary schools. So, next slide. They're in the room, some of these individuals, so I want to take them because they're new to the organization. So I'm emphasizing some of our new people. So if you can just stand when I say your name and your role, and then if your picture's not up there, stand anyway because you're still part of the cabinet. So our new deputy superintendent will be joining us in October. She's currently the superintendent in Lake George, which I think is a big win for us, is Lynn Rutland. She'll be joining us in October towards the end, so she's coming on board. Carlos Cotto. Dr. Carlos Cotto is our new assistant superintendent for innovation, equity, and engagement. He'll be working on a community schools initiative, our My Brother's Keeper initiative, athletics, innovation in terms of anything new and exciting to bring. We're going to launch some parent centers, so that'll be under his charge. Dr. Sean Mason's not here. He's the African-American gentleman in the middle. He's coming up from Baltimore, so he'll be here tomorrow for the board meeting, and he starts next week. So he's in transition, moving his family to Schenectady, and they're getting settled. Assistant Superintendent for Student Support Services, Andrea Tote Freeman, longtime district employee, does everything from special education, counseling, behavior specialist, everything on the student support side of the house, which is a very big house that I'm learning. So thank you, Andrea. And then he's more familiar than anybody I've ever met in the area so far. And he's our new executive director of elementary schools. He'll be charged with leading all our principals with Joe DiCaprio, which I believe many folks know his father was a longtime officer. Yeah. So everyone knows Joe is what I'm figuring out. Or his dad. And so Joe's joining us. We're bringing him back home, is what we tell him, because he was a Schenectady principal, and he left to go work in the neighboring district, but now we're bringing him back home. We're excited. We also have our chief information and technology officer, Chris, is right behind. He's manning he's our human remote over there. So he's everything in the technology side. And last but not least, obviously Karen Corona, our chief public information officer. And so these are the individuals that make up my team for an organization. Again, 10,000 kids, 17, 18 campuses, and a little bit over 2,000 employees. And so I mentioned the word equity earlier, and I want to make sure I make this point. There's a lot of polarization around the conversation of equity and critical race theory and things of that nature. And what we're focusing on is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I always use this graphic because I think it helps people who may not represent certain groups have the conversation and feel safe enough about the conversation versus ostracizing people. And so you'll hear us ask these questions. Who's in the room? Who are we talking about? Who is it we're trying to get in the room but can't get into the room to have the conversation? And the last but not least, is has everyone's ideas been heard? And if we approach this work around diversity, equity, inclusion, I think everywhere, maybe in the city, maybe across other areas, I think the conversations can be more productive versus more polarized right now when you just focus on other aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Next one. So obviously we're in the business of teaching and learning, and I just wanted to point this out to the City Council. We have required areas every year to assess our schools. The District Comprehensive Improvement Plan, we're required to do. Some of our schools need improvement. We're not going to shy away from that conversation. And these are the areas that they focus on: leadership and systems, curriculum, instruction, social emotional learning, and obviously, probably the most important piece is family engagement. Because we cannot turn our schools around without a reciprocal relationship with our parents and without them helping us. Kids are only in school about 6.5 hours. The majority of their 18-hour day, they're not in the building. So we've got to figure out ways where we can support, we can create opportunities for extended day, after school programming, Saturday programming, but also we're going to need our parents to do some of the things that we do in school, like reading to your kids, things of that nature. Next one. Our priorities this year are focused on 3 kind of major things: culturally relevant and rigorous and responsive curriculum. The same thing with instructional practices, culturally relevant and responsive instructional practices. So how do our teachers work with our kids when we know they come from a variety of backgrounds? And then obviously removing barriers to increase attendance and engagement. And so, remote is a great thing to remove that barrier, but it does require, accurate participation, accurate engagement. So I often hear like, well, that's a way to get attendance. It isn't the same when someone's in front of you when someone's on the screen. And so I always tell people that it's a different type of engagement. Next one. So everyone here is, we got a lot of money, right? Hey, you got a lot of money. This year's got a ton of money. So all of our money comes with strings, just like it does when it gets to the city, right? When the government gives you money, there's strings, and people just hear total dollar amount. So I wanted to show you that we have this American Rescue Plan, ESSER Act funds for the next 4 years. It's about $41 million, but there's certain things that the money must be allocated and used for. And so currently, we have an extension to the end of the month. We are looking at feedback from all of our principals, all their building leadership teams, and we're going to put together an itemized kind of plan on how we plan on using this money. But I want to emphasize, the next slide, that this plan was specific. It had some strings and some directions. It has to be used for non-reoccurring expenses. Why? Because the money will run out. And what we don't want, and what the government doesn't want, is to hear that schools can't do certain things because you took money away. So they're telling you right off the bat, you've got 4 years to spend this money, but you have to focus on non-recurring expenses. So I won't read all these to you, but just to know that, maximizing in-person instruction was a reason to use this money. Meaning, they want kids in the building, not remote instruction. The other thing was looking at technology. What other forms of technology can we purchase? Safely returning students to in-person, supporting early childhood. We know so much happens in those. If we're going to be reading by 3rd grade, we've got to do a lot of stuff at the pre-K and even birth. Really working with families around how do you read the kids early on, exposure to vocabulary, words, sight words, things of that nature. Next one. So we're reopening Schenectady strong. It's been something you guys have been doing since last year. It's something that I'm going to continue to do this year, is to reopen Schenectady strong. And so we're going 5 days. And so I don't want anyone to be surprised. So if you see a youth out there, get your butt to school. You're supposed to be in school now. Everyone's open. Get a mask and get in school. But we've shared, again, in an effort to be transparent, the document on how contract tracing works with our Department of Health. The Schenectady Department of Health has been fantastic. Keith Brown and his team, they've been sharing this. So this is how you know. If you're close to somebody, this is going to quarantine. If you're 12 and up, again, I'm not here to fight personal choice, but the vaccine's available. You don't want your kid at home, consider getting them vaccinated, because if they're vaccinated, they always are allowed to stay, even if they're within contact with somebody who is, as long as they don't show symptoms. So that's a great way to keep your child in school, is to consider that. The reopening plan is what we shared, is a summary of kind of all the key areas, and then the chart with the blue, yellow, orange, and red is, depending on what zone we are for transmission, those are the rules of engagement. So if you're allowed to have visitors, not to have visitors in school, how much distance you should have when you eat, things like that. The other thing I want to emphasize is that physical distancing or social distancing is not supposed to be an inhibitor to in-person learning. So the Kathy Hochul's been very clear, the governor, the Education Commissioner for the country has been very clear, Dr. Cardona. In-person learning needs to occur, and you can't use social distancing as the excuse why you can't bring everybody back. So you do the best you can, and that's why we're having masks in schools. When you can't stay, less than 3 feet or less than 6 feet, depending on the situation. Next one. So, any questions?
But I think it was very comprehensive, and so thank you for that.
Oh, thanks. He was going to pull me, so I had to hurry up.
You still be on inside.
It's nice to meet the team that you put this up.
Appreciate it.
And I do have one quick question.
Sure.
There was a program in the schools called Working Group on Girls. I'm sure you must have heard of it. Will that be coming back? Or?
Working group on girls?
Yes, where they would have girls circles in the schools.
Yeah. So we're trying to get back to the way we used to be.
Okay.
So all of those things hopefully will be ignited, and the people who ran, I think she works at Mount Pleasant, maybe
Yeah.
does the girls' day out.
Right.
So I think I met her. It's one of my bilingual social workers. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I put that together quick.
Well, I just also want to welcome you, and I too appreciate the presentation, and I really, as I mentioned to you before, I think that idea of collaborating in Schenectady Rising does mean that we all need to work as partners to make that happen, and we're thrilled that that seems to be part of your trust, and anything that we can do to work together with you, we're here.
Great. Thank you.
So once again, thank you. I have my copies. I do have a question about BOCES, and yes, we want everybody to be ready for college, but we do need we need people that are going to do plumbing and electrical. And is there any kind of focus on that when they sort of possibly like in middle school? Not everybody's going to be going off to college.
Sure.
And I know that there's other programs out there that's more or less after they graduate. So is there any thought about bringing something in sooner or?
Yeah, so we currently do have kids go to Capital Regional BOCES and participate there, but we also have the Steinmetz Career Leadership Academy, which has a culinary program, has a business pathway, so there is some CTE in terms of the district as well. So yeah, we have both options. That's Steinmetz's Career Leadership Academy is right down the street from Mount Pleasant.
Yeah, I know where it is.
So-
I'm just saying, but it's all high school, isn't it?
It's 9 to 12, but in middle school, they're supposed to take exposure to technology. They get family consumer science. So they are getting exposed to some of those things as well at the middle school level. It's not so much CTE or in terms of what you're thinking, starting in the culinary pathway. Again, I have a pretty good memory, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do in middle school to
No,
commit to a
right.
pathway. So what we do is more of an exploratory option.
Which I think is good.
Yeah. So the goal is they should maybe choose going into 9th grade if they want to start that pathway. But most of the pathways start more like 10th, 11th grade because there's 22 credits and we have to get kids ready for the Regents exam and get them out. So some of that starts in freshman year and then they kind of walk into a pathway depending on where they are. But yes, we do leverage Capital Region BOCES. We got to do better at it. We got to get more kids exposed to that. But I think for us is we have to show all the pathways. And so recently I had a meeting with Dr. Muno over at Schenectady Community College about how powerful would it be if everybody who graduated from Schenectady City School District already had an acceptance letter to the community college. And so that we told kids, hey, don't worry so much about this, explore these options, but also, by the way, at the end of the day, Schenectady Community College has an option for you just in case some of those things don't work out. So stay tuned, because that may happen.
I've asked you this question, but I'm going to ask you back.
Sure.
American Rescue Fund.
Yep.
See the county, the city, and the school receive funding. Is it something that you will want to work with the city to collaborate in the sense that we don't duplicate services? For example, like we may have smart city service, marketplace service, we have a community. Is that something that you can engage in?
Yeah, I think that these opportunities, and I met with the mayor, and he mentioned that as well. He's doing his public Wi-Fi, he's really ramping up the efforts. Anything we can collaborate on, and I would even say, maybe there's some shared services that we can think about, departments, different things that we do, that we can explore. I think facilities, another thing we have to start talking about. Obviously we have all these buildings, they're getting older and older. How do we think about projects where we can collaborate, where there's maybe a public library, a school, maybe a recreational program, and figure out how we can really get more, because school, everyone knows how to find a school, right? And so how do we make our schools more the hub to the community? So yeah, we're open to all that. Thanks.
Any more questions? Once again, I want to thank you,
Thank you.
team, for a wonderful presentation, and I hope that we can have this more often.
Yep, no problem.
All right, thank you so much. Have a good.
Thank you. We're not going to be rude, but we're going to.
Wait, I'm going next, that's not fair.
Thank you.
Remember, if you see the students, send them our way. We have the asshole all the time.
Who's holding it up?
one. Yeah, Joe, it's like the whole family was. What?
Oh, Joe, do you ready?
No, Joe is 4 years Call to old. order public safety, and we'll go to the first item, TIF, financial year 2021, 2022 grant award.
Do you know his
Chief.
dad? Last minute, stand back there. Thank you. I hope your resolution to me as part of the new superintendent. First, we had two grant items on the agenda under public safety. My glasses on, I apologize. The first one is a bid grant from Pretty Annual over the past 20 years. We received the same amount of funding as we did in 2021. The grant cycle runs from July 1st through June 30th. This year, the total award is $785,275. This is to the county of Schenectady, which were one of our partner grant applicants. The city of Schenectady will receive $354,142. This is all for gun violence and related gun violence. I also attached the budget so you can see the breakdown. It does provide money to field officers, which primary responsibilities in gun violence. If you have any questions?
Questions from my colleagues? Seeing no.
I just want to say I'm very supportive of this, anything we can do with some violence in the community. Good to see this.
Yeah, the state's very supportive of that. Also, obviously, the capital district is right. We recognize that and we use this money towards those investigations and trying to proactive activity as well.
Seeing no other question, I'll make a motion. So, second, all in favor?
Aye.
The next item is the Police Traffic Service Program grant, New York State Governor's Traffic Safety Committee.
Yes, this is a state grant also towards our traffic division. This year is $39,440. Similar to the last grant. So it's an annual grant, we're not guaranteed it. It's based on our performance and traffic accidents and so forth that we have. And we make an application yearly and there's a formula for disbursement of the funds. But again, I attached the award letter towards grants so I can use any questions council has.
Questions? Go ahead, please.
So it mentions that one of the things is to reduce aggressive driving behaviors. Can you just give us an indication what that looks like? Because we have a lot of aggressive driving. Or,
Yeah,
no, can't tell us secrets here.
I don't think there's any big secrets, but it's actually go out there and kind of different enforcements, different areas. So we enforce of aggressive driving in certain areas, we'll address it. High speeds, sometimes irritable, or at certain times of the day, it's people leaving in and out of traffic, trying to get ahead of the next person you pay attention at. Some of the intersections that light turns red, and you stay in the middle of the intersection and tie traffic otherwise, just to keep the traffic flowing in a safe manner. We also use our cameras as much as possible if we see patterns or different things that we can use to investigate certain quite frankly. It's people sometimes get in cars and have a 3,000-pound weapon, but they don't realize that it can be used as a weapon, not intentionally, just instantly, but still, if they're not adherent to the rules of the road. So I can't sit here and say we have a secret formula other than we go out and be proactive in enforcement.
Thank you.
Any question? We have a motion. Second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The next item is a contract with the City of Schenectady pedestrian improvement. Mrs. Chris
Sure, so what we have here is a federal aid project funded through what is called PSAT, Protector and Safety Action Plan. The work is what was discussed for around the downtown area, around City Hall, Liberty Street at J, Clinton, and Clinton and Franklin, also an intersection in the Stockade. The project is hoping to be awarded to County Industries. There is also a city share and a Metroplex share. It's not specifically mentioned here, but we are partnering with Metroplex as they have an interest in, as part of this project, converting J Street to two-way in front of the post office. So since we were improving the signal there as part of this project, we bundled those together and we'll be doing the project. So at the conclusion, when the signals are all upgraded, the measure infrastructure upgraded, J Street in front of the post office will be two-way. The project will start this year, however, most likely won't conclude to next year. The state gave us an extension, actually all projects under this form an extension because of supply chain shortages. We're having a very hard time getting the signal poles, actually just the materials. So we're probably going to be out there starting, trying to work around, we're coordinating with the farmers market, which is a big concern because we're going to be in their areas of work. But we're looking to complete the project, start this year, complete it by June next year.
What was your estimated engineering estimate for this project?
For the project, it was 1.6.
Any other questions from the colleagues?
Okay.
Second? All in favor? Aye. The next item is just a follow-up discussion where we are with the sidewalk.
Information. So, I just put this together so I didn't have time to get it to Sam. So if you would like to look at it and then discuss it at the next meeting, that's perfectly fine. It is a package of kind of all the information related to sidewalks. So I'll just briefly go through. It starts with Central Parkway on the west, the odd side of the street. Then we move on to the even side of the street. Then I took some pictures with a tape measure just to show, we're going to have to either reconstruct the road and bring it down or go on to private property more. Because what you'll see is we don't have curb review. And what happens is this estimate, if we were to look at it, I would say that I'm making sure we don't repeat mistakes that were made in the past when we did this project the first time. So one of the things that you'll see on this estimate that weren't on previous estimates by some of my associates in my department is I've kind of assessed, is there a driveway? Is there a lead walk? What's the material that the driveway or the lead walk are made of? Because what we were running into the problem of was escalating costs on Ardsley and DeKalb. And the reason is we were a little robotic, with our estimates, saying is we're going to replace the sidewalk. It's 40 feet. But when you replace the sidewalk, if it's 5 inches higher and their lead walk is low, we were getting complaints, well, now you got to replace my lead walk. What about my driveway? So now we're putting asphalt in. So we were doing all these handwork items, and the costs were going higher. We were incurring them, or we were passing them on, and there wasn't this, I'm not going to say it wasn't transparency, it was just that we hadn't dealt so much with a private owner before. So I tried to take into account those and assess, you see here where it says alleys on the first page. All of these properties do not have driveways onto Central Parkway. They have an alley in the back, they have it out there. So you'll notice that the costs vary because we're not going in there with bar mesh, we don't have a driveway apron. So I'm trying to show that same thing. If you go to the third page of the pictures from Street View, you can see these walkways that lead down. These walkways lead down, they're probably 2 inches up. So I have to be smarter, and I'm not going to say I'm going to have to be smarter when we design this and do it, because typically what we had done is we would put a 4-inch curb in, and the sidewalk would be here, and the lead walk would be here, and we'd replace it, but we would get complaints in public, if you remember. So people would come back and say, now we're getting public. And it was like, okay, well, this isn't a project to go all the way back on your house. This isn't supposed to be, we're supposed to be a sidewalk public works project. So we were on this weird line of where we were with the projects. So then I also put in the resolution that we passed before, which showed that, we subsidized Ardsley to camp to 5540. And then the last page is the bid document, or a summary from the camp when we did get it, which showed that the actual price was $83.55. And then going back to the first sheet, just because it's a little different, you'll see that there's 2 ways that we can kind of look at this. There's the totals, which vary, and there is the cost per foot, which vary. So that's trying to account for maybe a little asphalt or a lead walk or something different. But if we wanted to do it uniformly, that's the orangish golden box on the bottom, which would be, okay, we understand that, but let's just uniformly assess it, and that's the cost there. So, look over what you have. We could walk the street if you'd like to. I know that I believe I'm going to be walking the street with someone on South College Street in the coming future. I don't know if it's yourself, but they're looking to do a petition there, and they'd like to walk the street because they have some more questions about curb heights and drainage and how it affects other properties. So it gets a little complicated when you start affecting it, but this is, I think it's a good start for information.
Number one question, are you looking to go further into people's property? Is it your, in order to make this?
I am not looking to go farther. I am just acknowledging that there is a potential.
Okay.
So what I'm looking to do is, if we're going to move forward, and I am encouraging the council as we go forward, that we do it similar to the camp, and the city take on a share that is curbs and it is the road. Even though we just paved the road, to go back in, because what I'm seeing is, I have to go out and maybe take some shots and find that maybe instead of a 2-inch mill, I have to go down 5, because there has to be some happy medium. Because some places there's 4 inches of curb, some places there's 1 inch of curb. And if I go through and I just go robotic, which is what we did in the past, we're going to end up with a lot of problems. And the problem with a project such as this is you are affecting, the property owners are paying. So when I show up at a job site, or you show up to talk, everyone may have their little picadillos about what's wrong. And a lot of them on the camp came to drainage, because we put in this beautiful 5.5-inch curb, and we didn't look so much at the driveway 10 feet back and how it would affect it. So, you know, we held to our standards a little too much. Whereas I said that there's certain standards that we can take some leeway with, that we have to do. So that's why I made sure on this particular one not to repeat that. I went out there, I took measurements, I took some photos, just to show you I changed the way this looks. It's a little bit more detailed than the past one, which if you look at the camp, it was very just concrete.
So what is the actual curb height supposed to be?
We like a curb anywhere from 4 to 6 inches, depending on the surroundings. We prefer 4 to 6 inches of curb. That's a nice set curb. We don't, if you go lower, people start to try to drive up on the curb at 4 inches. It's kind of more of a preventative.
So once this is done, we're doing the island also?
Yep.
Okay, so that is going to deter people from parking on the street, correct? Because the curb is going to be too high for someone with a car to pull up on, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're also going to, similar to the camp, make sure that we measure and have a uniform, somewhere in the realm of 20 to 22 feet, to make sure that you can fit a car and have a travel lane. Some areas of Central Parkway, especially that curve,
The curb is terrible.
they feel very tight. So then people just,
Parking on the sidewalk.
right. And you also have to remember too, is you can put it there, but if somebody is so, inclined, you just put your tire up the driveway, and then you ride up on the curb. You don't have to just
You
hop
need
the
to tell
curb.
everybody.
I'm just-
What did you tell them?
Yeah, so that's something we're cognizant of, because of the curb does feel narrow. And luckily, most people, I think you can see, have driveways, but still people like to park on the road. Go ahead, please.
I just want to clarify something that I think I heard you say. So what you're going to ultimately be asking us to do is for the city to pay for the curbs.
The city does pay for curbs, yes. So this is everything that focuses on the property owner.
Right.
And then there's another component, which is the city share, which is the pavement and the curbs. And we pay for that usually with either a CHIPS fund or a bonded fund. That's different. So that's within what we usually have. What's that?
We'll be doing the curbs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, no, similar to the camp, like Ardsley Road, we could get away with not doing the curbs because we had a grass median. Here, it's integral. We have to do the curbs. The issue is going to be is to find that happy balance where I'm going to cut the road down so that I'm not raising the curbs so high where everybody's going to pond. That's where we, like I say, and on one side, if you're familiar with Central Parkway, on one side of Central Parkway, which I believe is the east side, you have a hill. So you're great. But on the west side, you have very flat. And we have issues with puddling in the alleyway, we have issues with puddling, so we want to try to mitigate as best we can, so.
Is there additional drainage that you can put, I mean, is there additional storm drain hooked up that you could do on there to avoid it?
Possibly, but we're talking about more private property issue. I'm trying not to keep the water on their property to make sure it's still.
I know, but I'm just saying, I know what you're talking about, I walk all the time, and it does get, I can see it being an issue.
Okay.
So if there's a way to, maybe support it.
thank you for this. This is a big improvement over what we first did. So, well done, and thank you for that. And secondly, just as the information piece, you talked about the stockade. Their petitions were turned in today.
Okay.
So Ms. Mike has those, and I guess the next step is to pass them to Mr. Golden. So.
Yeah, I mean, I still would like to walk with Ms. Runkle. I believe she reached out to you, or maybe to Mr. Palmy.
She did ask for us, the three of us to schedule a walk around the street to identify some of the many of these streets as well. So we'll do that. We'll schedule
Yeah,
that.
it's the same question.
Yeah.
How we can all make it happen, to make everybody happy, which is it's difficult.
I want to thank you for doing this together. We have waited several weeks for this.
No, that's
This is
right.
a wonderful presentation here, detailed. We'll present it to them and we'll come back in 2 weeks for our way forward to address this and sort of the council needs to address and move forward in setting up the special assessment district.
Sure, if there are any questions?
And to get the neighborhood representative.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
The next item is no defunding the Schenectady Police Department. Ms. Karen Zaluski,
Yep, forwarded out a draft resolution that was provided in their emails. I have copies here. You have, sorry. I've read it.
Yeah, yes.
Nice to meet you.
So I emailed this out late yesterday afternoon. I think it's extremely important that we continue to support our police department, and I find it extremely troubling when there is a city school board member that has taken a stance on defunding the Schenectady Police Department. And I think it's important that we continue to support our police department. Chief Siebert did a great job tonight presenting the gun violence. Once again, illegal guns in our city streets and around the capital region and the state needs to be addressed. I know there's no support for it, but I would once again call my fellow council people. It's a way to start a conversation at the state level. Something needs to be done to support our police department, and I think that the gun violence and the fact that we have activists calling for defunding, especially an elected official on the city school board, I think it's very troubling. And it's decisive, and it ends up really putting a divide between what the superintendent just came and did. He did a great job putting forth a great presentation on collaborative, inclusiveness, and I think it's important that we as a council need to take a stance on supporting our police department and the changes that Chief Clifford is putting forward. And, I think the leadership here is necessary to ensure that we maintain good relations with our police department and our city schools. So I am not supportive of Ms. Miles' stance on defunding the police department, and I think as a council we need to show our support to the police department, which is why I brought this forward.
Any other questions? Comments from my colleagues? Go ahead.
So, first of all, I think that when we're talking about funding the police, that's a budgetary issue. That's something that we as a council need to decide and talk about. And so I think that's where this really belongs. And in thinking back from my time on the council, I can't think of a time when we were asked to fund something the police department brought forward and we said, no, we're not doing it. I mean, often they come, like you said today, where there's no match, but they still need to come before the council, and we still supported that. And even when there has been a match, we have supported that. So I am not aware of any petition that's come forward at this point that says we want you to do this, and so I'm not really sure of what this is a response to. So that comes to my mind as a question. And in terms of like in here specifically, you say that a person has the right, the First Amendment of the Constitution to protest and assemble peacefully. There's also freedom of speech that's included in this. So I'm not sure if as a council we can take a position against an individual, because an individual is named here, because they chose to exercise their freedom of speech. I don't know how we do that and say we support freedom of speech. And we have numerous people that come before the board, before the council at the rail. I don't think we all agree with everything they say. So do we come to the point where we start to create resolutions because someone said something that we don't agree with? I can say from my personal standpoint, I support the police. Does any group agree on everything? Absolutely not. And that's when we sit down and we discuss where we agree or we disagree. And so to me, to start, first of all, to choose an individual, to call them out and to say, because you said this, and just for the record, just to be clear, any statements you made was prior to becoming a board member. It was before she was an elected official on the city school board. So people heard what she had to say, and she still got elected. So I just want to make sure that that's very clear. And so I don't think we have the right to call a person out because they exercise their freedom of speech and say, hey, we know that it's in your First Amendment rights, but because we don't like what you said, therefore we have a resolution. We as an elected body who say we support the Constitution are going to put a resolution against you personally, because the resolution is that therefore being resolved, and in there it clearly states that person's name. Is the language divisive? I won't disagree with that. There's a lot of language that is divisive. Is this a slippery slope where people say things we don't like and then we start saying, well, we're going to create a resolution because they say something we didn't like? I think that's a dangerous path to go down. I also think it invites the ACLU to come to our council meeting and say, how can we do this? Not only them, probably other groups as well. So this is, in my mind, more a resolution against a person as it is in favor of a budgetary issue, which, again, I think that's where funding goes, and that's where we get to decide. We, this council, it's our role and responsibility to say, well, the mayor puts together the budget. We just be clear about that. So we say to the mayor, we do this and not that. So I think that this belongs in the budget, and I have, again, just to reiterate to both point that I have not seen a specific call to defund the police. And do we really have a right to say to someone, you exercise your constitutional rights, but we're putting out a resolution that say we don't agree with what you have to say? I think that's not something that we can do as a council, or something that we actually should even do as a council. So if we're talking about funding as opposed to being against an individual because of their speech, I think this is two very different things. So I know that what's put on the agenda says defunding the police, but this resolution is really not reflecting that at all. It really is reflecting that person said something and that person should not have said that, and we're saying you shouldn't have said it, and we're putting a resolution out that says that you should not have said that. So that's how I'm reading this. So.
Thank you. A few points. First of all, Ms. Miles did say after she was on the Board of Education, and it was in the newspaper that she wanted to defund the police. Typically, and for the longest time, the school board and the city council have remained two very distinct bodies, and here we have a school board member crossing that line. So secondly, the resolution itself, as I read it, is very much about funding the police and not something about a particular individual. How I read it was the individual is mentioned because she is a public official, and we have that right to make that distinction. Third, just as cities have done resolutions to defund the police, we can very well do resolutions to fund the police and call against it. And if there are repercussions, people can certainly come and speak and have their say at the council meetings, and that doesn't take away from their freedom of speech. So I really don't see any particular issue on this. I think it's something that I would support. I understand the issue with funding, and we will take that up in October. But this, I think, sends a message to our residents who complain about lots of stuff, and in particular with regards to quality of life issues that the police can deal with. And they're understaffed, and defunding them certainly, and quite frankly, she said she would like to abolish. That doesn't go anywhere. I mean, everybody knows some of the key pieces to a healthy city is an excellent school district, which hopefully we're on the right track. A safe community where people want to move, and that entails having a police department that is engaged with the community, becomes partners with the community, and so much of what we've done in the community outreach and the steering programs that we had with the police reform was related to the police getting out into the community. And they can't do that if there's public officials calling for defunding the police. So to me, it's a real distinction here of we have two separate boards that have largely stayed in their own areas. How I was always told as a member of the city council is we don't interfere with the school board. We can go to the meetings and we can certainly have our say, but that's as a personal individual. But as a school board member saying you want to defund the police, I'm sorry, I disagree with what your concept is, and I would support this resolution.
My 8 years on the council, I don't think any one of us on this council ever denied the police department the resource needed for their functioning. I think I can speak in some minute here that there's always support the police department, and any resolution before us for funding, it's always being funded by this council. Since I've been in this council for 8 years. You know, it's a budgetary stuff, and I think we just can't single out one individual because one individual is going about making a relevant statement. We as a council, we need to look at a broader picture. Not to take, are we going to have someone else make the very same statement? What are we going to do? Are we going to do individual resolution, calling out individual members of the public? I don't think we as a council will do that to the police department. We need a police department. We need a police department to safeguard our community. And we have been providing the necessary funding over the many years I've been on this council, and it will continue to happen. So having a resolution, I don't think it's needed at this point in time. Everybody knows we are pro-police. We support our police department and the many works that they're doing. And we thank them every day and night for what they're doing. I mean, putting a resolution, I don't think it's needed. I mean, we have a budget to deal with at the end of next month, and we'll address all these things and look at how we can able to maintain the funding and or increase the funding to our police department and provide necessary resources to them. We can't just go out, picking information from the public and doing this thing. It's leading to a dangerous path.
And so Mr. Palomini said it wasn't directed at a specific person, but the resolution part of it says, therefore be resolved that the Schenectady City Council cannot, with clear conscience, support the cause of community activist Schenectady City School Board member Jamaica Miles' stance of defunding the police department, nor her call to abolish the police department. We are specifically talking about a specific person. We're not even that so we say we don't agree with it. So therefore, we put together a resolution that says, and therefore be resolved that the Schenectady City Council considers such dialogue to be divisive and detrimental to the safety and security of both our residents and law enforcement officers. This is directed at an individual. It is not, if there were language in here that said we want to support the police in this way and by having different programs or whatever it may be, but this is really resolution, and Mr. Holman, I don't know if he had a chance to look at it, but the way I read this is that you put a person's name in here, and you're saying we clearly do not support that person because of what she said. That's what this says in plain English. So that to me is different than not defunding the police, again, which is a budgetary issue, which we'll be discussing in just a couple of months. And so, as Mr. Readiness said, as I've said, that has never been an issue. There hasn't been any resolutions that out there that come to us to say do it. So I'm not sure what this is a response to. And I don't know that we consider what people say, but without a real call to do this, I'm not sure what we're answering here, or really what it achieves.
So, it was clearly stated, it was on, in the papers, during, tape recording, she clearly stated that she wants to defund the police department. She's an elected official on the city school board. We are trying to build a collaborative environment, a cooperative environment. And we have a board member that is being decisive, stating that she does not want to fund the police department. And my stance is that we need to be supportive of our police department. We have a school board member that is, I think, being, not collaborative, not thinking about being inclusive. And, there was a great presentation here tonight from the new superintendent, and I think, that needs to be carried forward. I know that he's met with the chief. I know that, things are going to move forward in a good manner, but I need to understand that it's not a school board member stating that defunding the police is acceptable. We need to support our police. We don't need to defund our police, and I just think it's wrong that an elected school board member is stating that she wants to have police defunded. And she represents the school board. We don't go to school board meetings and tell the school board what they need to do. And I think it's wrong that she's out stating that she wants the police department defunded. I think it's decisive.
I think that if you feel that way in terms of the school board, but I think this is a conversation to have then with the superintendent. If you feel that way about the school board member or with the chair of the school board, I don't think that we as a council say again it's against an individual that we don't like what you said, and therefore we're putting a resolution together because there may be things that council members say that people don't, and we didn't come back and put to a resolution. There may be things that you said in the paper, that I've said in the paper, that people don't agree with. They then come and say,
They're ready to come to the ground and tell us that.
and they do. But I think as an elected body, we don't say to someone, you cannot exercise
I think
your.
we need to show our support of the police department.
I don't disagree with that.
I'm just saying,
I-
I think it's
but-
very important that we.
Can we just,
I agree, we should support our police, and we do support our police. But I'm disagreeing where we should not come against an individual because of a statement that they made, because they exercised their First Amendment right. That is where I draw the line, that we come against an individual because where does that end? Somebody supports something else that we don't agree with, or we don't think is appropriate, or we don't think is currently politically correct. So where does it end? So supporting the police is absolute, but going against an individual because of something that they said that we don't agree with. And again, this is one member of the board, so even if she says that a school board member and they had any control over it, which they don't, it's one member. We at this table, after the mayor, then we do what's appropriate in terms of funding our police, allocating whatever community resources that are needed, all of which was talked about in part of the police reform and reinvention. So we put all that in there, and we talked about all that. So when the budget comes forward, we have the opportunity to do that, because we decide the budget. So you don't have to say, oh, we support it and we are against you saying that, because we get to decide how the money gets spent.
I just think it's important for us to understand that Ms. Miles is a leader in this community, and she's calling out her department, and I just think it's wrong and it needs to be addressed.
People statements that they feel are, their own suspicions. We can go back and forth about that, because it's happened more than once, it's happened amongst the council. But people say what they feel, and if you live in America, and you have a right to do that, and as long as you're not screaming fire in a crowded room, you haven't violated, you're exercising your First Amendment right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we're just really missing the boat here. I mean, when you have a public official who's come out and said that there's nothing wrong with taking a stand, particularly when we've had other members calling for diverting budgetary money from the police department, other abolishing the police. These are all things that have been discussed publicly in the steering committee meetings themselves, and now we have a school board member calling to defund the police. It just doesn't bode well for the city. When we're trying to build relationships in this city and purposely is creating divisions, I think that's why the resolution is necessary. But again, I don't sit on this committee, so it takes two in the committee to pass it. So,
You know, we have a council member who said that candidates of color were secretly doing things against the police. No, you know, what do we do about things like that? That's why I'm saying to you, people have a right to say what they say, whether you agree or disagree, it's in the newspaper. Then you have to, you know. But if it happens, people say things that we disagree with all the time. That doesn't make it facts just because someone said it. So again, we're targeting one person because we don't agree with this person's stand, because they are a public figure. I don't think this is the first public figure that's ever said anything that we don't agree with. So I just put together a resolution to attack someone personally. I think it's not what this body is called to do, and if we feel there's a level of disagreement, then comes the opportunity to sit down and discuss it and talk about it and work through it with the individuals. And I don't know if that's even been made an attempt to do, but I think just putting together a resolution because we didn't like what somebody said, and then it's like, we're going to pass this as a council. I just, you know, I want to keep repeating myself. Where does that end? Where do we stop with that? We can't make things personal. We really cannot make things personal. We have to do our due diligence, as Mr. Conley talked about. When we do the budget, we are the ones who do the budget. We are the ones that say, the police department gets this much money based on what the memorials put forward. That is what happens here. So because someone says something contrary to what we believe in, or what we're comfortable with, doesn't change the fact that we still get to decide on the budget. And that's where this belongs. Police funding is a budgetary issue. The police department will present their budget, they'll come out and say, this is what we need to do our job, then we'll go through it, and, you know, the mayor will do, you know, either change whatever needs to be changed, and then we as a council will get it. This is a budgetary issue. We can deal with this as a budgetary issue. And I don't think anyone on this council has come forward and said, let's defund the police.
Any other comments? There isn't support for this item. We'll move to the next item, the CR for Holy Name of Jesus. Everyone should have a copy of the draft. They are asking for a resolution to celebrate their 100th anniversary, and I think it's fitting as a council and as a city we recognize their contribution towards the city. So can I have a motion?
So,
Second. All in favor? Any other business for public safety? Second.
second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
call to order the Finance Committee. The first item on the agenda is the 2021-22 HUD Continuum for YMCA. Ms. Dio.
Oh,
Congratulations.
Care to the City of Schenectady for subrecipient to YMCA for funding to cover rental and administrative costs to address homelessness in the city.
Are there any questions?
I'll move this.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a call for a public hearing for the 2022 budget. Mr. Ferrari?
Thank you. As you know, the mayor's proposed 2022 budget will be delivered to the city council on or before October 1st. And pursuant to second-class cities law and the charter of the city of Schenectady, the ordinance to approve and adopt the proposed 2022 budget needs to be adopted by November 1st. And one of the necessary components to pass this proposed budget is a public hearing. So we're requesting that the city council at their September 13th council meeting approve the call for the public meeting to be held on October 12th of 2021.
Are there any questions?
I'll move this.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next is an update on the ARPA funding from the mayor.
Just, council, when the superintendent alluded, we've had conversations with the county manager. We'll hopefully have a schedule by the end of the week for 3, 4, 5 community meetings with the council and for neighborhood groups, community groups to look at some of the needs that they may have, give us a chance to outline some of the options, and as we move forward with just the formal alignment of that money and being ready to spend it. And hopefully we'll be able to do it in a coordinated and complementary fashion with the other levels of government. So the county would be part of the discussions, and the school district also. So with that, the council, before we have the council's input participation.
Are there any questions?
So you'll have meetings, just to be clear, in various, like throughout the city, various communities, but the neighborhood
We're
association,
going to work with
whatever.
the neighborhood associations primarily, but not necessarily exclusively.
Thank you.
And again, trying to do this, even though the formal budget process for the city will move in what we call a normal fashion, American Rescue Plan, we have to take that into consideration. Some of the criteria we use it to replace some of the money that we lost. We put some staff back in from that. And looking forward to working with the council to come up with that final document, not only for the 2022 budget, but also 2023.
Any other questions?
That's good. Good
Have a
information. Thank you.
motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Call to order city development and planning. We have 7 items on the agenda. The first 2 will be in public session. First one, license agreement with Metroplex for the construction of South Church Street. Mr. Wallin.
As part of the continued redevelopment of downtown, the city in partnership with Metroplex, or vice versa, however you want to look at it, sought to redevelop South Church Street between Fuller and State Street. I'm sure you're familiar with this area. If you were to go down the road, you can definitely tell it's one of the last areas to be developed, leaving something to be desired. We've seen a lot of investment, as in my legislative request, and as Metroplex put in there, between Erie Boulevard and State Street and Gateway Park for public infrastructure. And on top of that, the private infrastructure that we've seen invested there. This is kind of one of the final pieces to complete our lower downtown development. So the city and Metroplex went forward in cooperation with a design and then a bid. The understanding was the city would contribute for the roadway and the curbing, while Metroplex would take care of things such as SECC is actually a partner on this with the parking lot. They're also helping contribute towards lights and sidewalks and things the city usually doesn't get involved with. So we think this is a good project, another example of us working in partnership with them to get progress done. It's going to be a terrific project. It's in coordination with, we're already making the road one way, even though it formally has not been. At the conclusion of this project and during this project, the road will be one way. It will increase parking. It will look, literally like $1 million. It's going to be terrific. We're eliminating over a dozen utility poles, most of which were there were unnecessary to feed infrastructure that hasn't been there in years. But we are cognizant of future development. We are leaving 2 poles to make sure that the larger lots that currently aren't developed will have utilities. So this is the project as it is. I would recommend authorizing the mayor to be able to enter into the agreement.
Any questions?
So, second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Okay, so we have folks from Stewart's here to talk to us about the rezoning of 1021 Collins Street. There will be a public hearing on next Monday. There's 20 Monday.
Good evening, I'm Chuck Marshall from Stewart Shops. We have under contract the Sunoco at 1501 Union and the Jones Funeral Home at 1503 Union. However, those 2 are both in the C2, which allows a convenience store with gasoline filling. 1020 McClellan Street, which is essentially the green landscape strip between the R1 use and the C2 district, is actually zoned R1 and is not allowed to be incorporated in our use. So what we're here tonight to request is rezone of the parcel at 1020 McClellan Street. I saw questions, so I stopped. Okay. And then upon its incorporation, we would redevelop the parcel to put the Stewart's with its rear to the residential district and put the gas in front.
I just wanted to figure out where we go with the planning commission, so forgive me for that.
So the planning commission issued a favorable recommendation. I think that there's going to be some site plan concerns, elevation type things as there normally is. I think that we've done a pretty good job in redeveloping stores throughout the city with meeting most of the requests. So again, I think in this instance, we should be able to work through our summer.
Ms. Patrick?
I was just wondering, in terms of the other suites that is a few blocks up the road on Main Street, I don't know if you talked to us about that. But
So with us is Jennifer Howard. She's actually our property manager, and she'll be the one at the meeting next week. So because of the tenancy situation, we've been unable to redevelop the Upper Union Street store as we have Van Franklin, Brandywine, and Broadway. So what this does is, as you look at where we are in the city, the Union Street corridor, where the Upper Union Street store is, it does not have a side street traffic that matches the McClellan traffic.
Right.
So here we would see effectively 50% more cars than we're currently seeing. And we do think that that would be a longer, that's the longest lasting point in the market. While the Upper Union Street location has more viability both as a store and a tenant.
Will you be closing the other store?
No, there's no plans to close it, but we can't make it we can't improve it with the existing tenancy.
So that was my question, because I noticed that like all the stores that you're doing is just like really renovating them, the one on Van Franklin and Upper State, so you're doing a lot of work there. So the one Upper Union, that will not be able to happen with that one.
No, we'll not see the same type of reinvestment effect.
But the newer one will probably look more like the other ones.
Yeah, the newer one will look exactly like Van Franklin, almost. The layout will be effectively the same, with a side door on McClellan, and then a front door that will face the gas tank. And just, one of the things that I want to show is just to show you the amount of space we're actually talking about. This is the existing parking, so we're oh, sorry.
Thank you.
we're literally talking about like a couple of feet of usable area. Our real intention is to leave that green space area between us and the residential district that abuts it. These homes don't have windows on the back of the residence. So one of the things we're able to do by rezoning this property, we can keep lights off the back of the building. So effectively the building becomes a screen from the residential district to the commercial district, with the majority of the commercial activity kept to the front.
Any other questions? Let's see if you want to set out.
I didn't do the meeting, but yes, that's.
Any other questions or comments? So thank you, Mr. Marshall, coming in. Again, the public hearing will, on this project will be starting Monday, September 13th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The remaining items are for executive session, property sales. So I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. All those in favor? Aye.